Good afternoon. Awesome, awesome. I can hear you okay as well. I will begin our program. Signs are powerful. Without a spoken word, signs can send a message. Think traffic signs. They provide direction. Think Jim Crow. It provided oppression. And think protest signs. It provides transformation. Today, we're here to celebrate a symbol of two signs going up, which symbolizes community, dedication, justice, liberty, unity, representation, and peace. Preservation of one's own culture does not require contempt or disrespect for other cultures. Cesar Chavez. These new streets send a message that this community is for all. Welcome to the street renaming celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Cesar E. Chavez Avenue. Welcome. Two heroes, two streets, two communities. And stay tuned because we have another two to add to this. You'll hear a little bit about that later. Good afternoon. My name is Sunita Lanier, and I have the privilege of serving as the Third Ward Commissioner for the City of Grand Rapids. I'm also a member of the March Committee who has invited all of you to be with us today, as well as your MC for today. I'm looking forward to a fabulous celebration, and I know you all are as well. I have a few housekeeping rules. We have a lot of speakers on our program, and we have very little time. Those two don't match. And so I am here to send a message to everyone who's on program to just be mindful of time. It's raining, and so we don't want those waiting outdoors for the 1:30 program to have to wait too long. So spare me from having to come up in my Mary J. Blige boots or my Coretta Pearls or my Jackie Kennedy suit to Sandman anybody off the stage. We need you to just be mindful of your own time there. If you're speaking, you are allowed or welcome to remove your mask as you're speaking, and others, please keep your mask going. What I will do is try to consolidate our speakers so that I don't have to come up multiple times. And we're going to get started with thanking our sponsors. We have Dr. Connie Dang coming to do that, as well as Commissioner Melinda Isasi, after which we will have Bishop Dennis McMurray, who will provide invocation. And then after Bishop McMurray, we will have the Imani singers who will provide a selection for Lift Every Voice. In that order, no more announcing you, come in that order. Thank you. Ladies.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Commissioner Lanier. On behalf of the March Committee, we would like to express our gratitude for the steadfast support and generosity of our sponsors. Your sponsorship is integral to making today's celebration possible for our community and a grand success. It is my honor to recognize the following sponsors: City of Grand Rapids, City of East Grand Rapids, the Community to Honor Cesar E. Chavez, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Committee, Founders Brewing Company, Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, Grand Rapids Community College, Grand Rapids Public Schools, Grand Valley State University, Mayan Buzz Cafe. And now I will turn it over to Commissioner Isasi to continue with the sponsors' recognition.
Thank you. I'll echo Dr. Dang's comments and sentiments about how excited we are here to be with you all today. Personal point of privilege, I didn't grow up on this corridor, but it feels like I did because my dad served as a principal at Hall, Cesar E. Chavez, for many years. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who mobilized in such a quick fashion. This work has taken time, and so we're excited and honored to thank you all who made a financial contribution to today's event and allowed for the families of Dr. King and Cesar E. Chavez to be with us today. the Black Impact Collaborative, Consumers Energy, Genesis Consulting Group, Iglesia Manantial de Vida, Reverend Dr. Chris Ramansadar, thank you especially for letting us be here today, Mercantile Bank, Mercy Health, Migrant Legal Aid, Olvera Enterprises, West Michigan Works, and Wolverine Building Group. Please, if you are here and you have been one of our sponsors in kind or financial, please stand up so we may recognize you and give you a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have an entrepreneurial challenge for this group already. Someone please come up with a solution to prevent glasses from fogging while we have our mask on. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you today for the gift of life that you have so graciously given to each one of us. We are ever so grateful for this opportunity to recognize and celebrate the life and legacies of these two phenomenal generals of social justice and human equality. Let this dedication today reignite and fan the flames of unity, collaborative brilliance, and municipal synergy that impacts the citizens of Grand Rapids and the county of Kent exponentially. As this intersection currently influences east and west, north and south. So let new opportunities, creative solutions, and significant work be birthed from this day forward. Dear God, give us your wisdom to move forward, passion for the journey, your power to endure perpetually, and your sovereignty and blessings to enhance our communities and its people. It's in Christos' name I pray. It's in Christ's name that I pray. And we all said together, amen.
Please stand for the singing of the Black National Anthem. Freedom, oh, let freedom ring, let freedom, oh, let freedom ring. freedom. Oh, let freedom ring.
Freedom on the mountain top, yes.
Oh, let freedom ring.
And freedom down
Let
in the
freedom.
below, Lord.
Oh, let freedom ring.
Freedom all over the world,
Freedom.
over the world, over
Oh,
the
let
world.
freedom ring.
Freedom for every
Let
man,
freedom.
boy and girl.
Oh, let freedom ring.
Freedom all over the world,
Freedom.
over the world,
Oh,
over the
let
world.
freedom ring.
Freedom for every
Let
man,
freedom.
boy and girl.
Oh, let freedom ring.
We sing of
Freedom.
Lord, thank you for giving me freedom. Ooh.
What an amazing rendition of Lift Every Voice. Thank you so much, Imani Singers. You all were looking like quadruplets up there. And thank you to Commissioner Isasi and Dr. Dang for your remarks, as well as Bishop McMurray. Decades of work is why we're all here, and the March Committee stands on the shoulders of so much work that's happened before us. So I'd like to, for a brief moment, ask the March Committee members to stand wherever you are as our co-chairs make their way to the stage. Thank you so much for your service. And if you were on the planning team for the 3 celebrations today, you can join them in standing as well. Thank you. So much work has been done. Our co-chairs, who are Lupe Ramos-Montani and Commissioner Robert S. Womack, have worked so hard to get us to this point, and they're going to come to provide historic context on how we got to this point, as well as a city staff member, Lou Canfield, who is going to kind of share the city's perspective and how the city provided direction for us. The hardest working woman in the city of Grand Rapids, Lupe Ramos-Montani. Come on up. As well as a community engagement extraordinaire. Where is Commissioner Robert Womack? You come on up. They're going to start, and then they'll bring Lou up. Thank you.
Well, hello, and I really want to thank all of you for being here today, because it's a big difference from when we started 20 years ago. We were speaking in front of crowds that looked just little diversity. Today is grand diversity, so give yourself a hand, Grand Rapids and East Grand Rapids. Today we are not only gathered here to rename 2 streets, but to honor 2 remarkable heroes, and also to show our appreciations to their families for the times that they sacrificed when they wanted to spend with their families. These 2 remarkable men have opened up dreams that are overflowing and will never stop. We have Reverend Derek King here today, who is the nephew of Dr. Martin Luther King and the son of civil rights fighter A.D. King. Let's give it up for him. We also have Paul Chavez, who is the son of Cesar Chavez, here with us all the way from the West Coast today. Let's give it up for him. These two patriarchs of those families made sacrifices for all of us to walk a better life, the world to be a better place, and the United States of America to be a better place. Unbeknownst to most people, they both had speeches about immaculate dreams. Cesar Chavez said, and I quote, "All my life I have been driven by one dream, one goal, one vision, to overthrow a farm labor system in this nation which treats farm workers as if they were not important human beings. Farm workers are not agricultural implements. Now, let's go back and take farm out of there because it's expanded beyond that. Workers are not implements. They are not beasts of burden to be used and discarded." Chavez went on to say, "That dream started in my youth." These dreams still live on today. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream that one day my daughters will live in a nation where they'll be judged by the content of their heart and their character, not the color of their skin." We all are the ones who keep this dream alive. The dream was brought together when a committee to honor Cesar Chavez's legacy and the committee to honor Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy came together. It grew even bigger when Commissioner Lanier joined and brought in the whole city of Grand Rapids. And now we have two cities, East Grand Rapids, both honoring these historical, remarkable heroes. We have our business community that's supporting it. We have our religious committee that's supporting it. As we have Pastor Hopkins here today, as we have Reverend Chris, who donated this church. This is the first time that I've seen a 360-degree panoramic vision of Grand Rapids working together. That needs to be saluted. As I close, we want to thank East Grand Rapids. The mayor of East Grand Rapids last night, they unanimously voted to let Dr. Martin Luther King Street extend to the very end of Franklin and East Grand Rapids. I want to thank our mayor, Rosalind Bliss, and especially our city manager, Mark Washington, for all the fantastic, incredible work he has done. You can't imagine some of the work he, Eric DeLong, Lou Canfield, and some of the workers that we have at the city have done for us, but I can tell you they deserve an applause. As I close out, because I'm going to let Lupe tell you the history, I just want to say, when I started this, you can believe I was well not in my 50s, not a gray hair, but we stuck with it because it's that important, because 20 years from now, some kid is going to say, why did those leaders fight so hard to put Dr. Martin Luther King's name on this street? Why did they fight so hard to put Cesar E. Chavez on this street? And when they Google the March Committee, they will find out, because we honor those that know war is not the answer. Only love can conquer hate. We honor those. And I really needed it. I wasn't always, as most of you know, and God's still working with me, but I wasn't always someone who thought peace was the right way when you're facing adversity. And one day I called Dr. Martin Luther King soft in comparison to some other leaders, and my daddy grabbed me and he said, yeah, it's easy to talk about racism in Harlem, but it's not easy to talk about it in Birmingham, Alabama, in Little Rock, Arkansas, in front of Bull Connor, next door to the Ku Klux Klan. He said, Dr. Martin Luther King is one of the bravest men that ever walked this planet. And I want those young kids to get the same message when they see Cesar Chavez and Dr. King that I got when my father picked me up by this collar and set a young man straight. Let's give it up for Dr. Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, and our children in the future, and the message you have all helped us leave for future generations. Give it up for yourself once more. Thank you. Now for a woman who has been doing this for over 20 years, a little longer than me, and also stuck with it and has been a uniter, and not only fought for Cesar Chavez, but walked with us. knocking on doors to MLK, as I also walked on Granville for Cesar Chavez. But during some of our moments of weakness, of being busy, I mean, she really stuck up. This is my sister for real. Give it up for my co-chair, Lupe Ramos Montani.
¡Se puede! ¡Se puede! ¡Se puede! Sí se puede. Yes, we can. And yes, we did. For you see, we had a dream for 21 years that someday in the city of Grand Rapids, 2 streets would be renamed for 2 remarkable civil rights heroes. We draw our strength from the very despair in which we have been forced to live. We shall endure. Cesar Estrada Chavez. We had a dream. An inspired and collaborative meeting was held on October 21st, 2019. The robust discussion included a review of city policy and process. Leaders of the Hispanic community and the African American community decided to submit a joint renaming request letter to the city engineer. The group became known as MARCH, moving ahead for remarkable civil rights heroes. We had a dream. Prior to submitting the request, the March Committee planned to conduct an outreach to the residents, businesses, churches, and institutions in the corridor of the 2 streets. But you know what? COVID-19 stopped us in our tracks. Days before the first community meeting. But that did not stop us from rebounding and hosting. Now we know how to use Zoom. Virtual sessions to hear from the community, because we had a dream. On June 29, 2021, a letter was submitted to Mr. Berkman, city engineer, to formally request the city to begin the process of renaming Franklin Street to Martin Luther King Jr. Street and Granville Avenue to Cesar Estrada Chavez Avenue. We had a dream. On August 28, 2021, a petition support drive was held. Volunteers from all walks of life circulated petitions on an extremely hot day, 91 degrees Fahrenheit and 82% humidity. It was a treacherous day, but despite the weather, it was a successful day. We had a dream. On October 12th, 2021, the Grand Rapids City Commission formally approved, and I'm gonna cry, the renaming of 2 streets. Having complied with the policy and process of and received approval from the city of Grand Rapids, today, February 22nd, 2022, is witnessing the unveiling of signs for 2 remarkable civil rights heroes. We will witness that up and down. Now, you have to remember, the names of the 2 streets are Cesar Chavez Avenue and Martin Luther King Jr. Street. Se puede. Se puede. Se puede. Thank you very much. You all are awesome.
Good afternoon. My name is Lou Canfield. I'm Chief of Staff to City Manager Mark Washington. And for the past 2.5 years, it's been my honor to serve as an advisor to the March Committee. We are here today because of partnerships. Partnerships in pursuit of these historic name changes of Franklin Street to Martin Luther King Jr. Street and Granville Avenue to Cesar E. Chavez Avenue. Partnerships that acknowledge the complexity and challenges of street name changes, faced those head-on, endured, and succeeded. Central to this work has been the partnership that the March Committee, led by co-chairs Ramos, Montany, and Womack, forged with the city. The city had a pre-existing policy for street name changes, a policy that specifies an open and transparent process, a policy with a purpose to ensure that street name changes are made deliberately, with advance notification to property owners and residents, and with the goal of community consensus. The March Committee and the city followed the required renaming process to the letter, and the committee chose, wisely, to go beyond the minimum required notifications. They chose, at their option, to engage with key stakeholders through virtual meetings before submitting the official renaming request. They conducted a signature drive, and they convened many subsequent informal meetings with residents and stakeholders. All these actions helped build community consensus. Once City Commission approved the renamings last October, an internal partnership among city staff and departments was initiated to implement the changes seamlessly with minimal impact on residents and businesses. We've updated our records, worked with external partner agencies to update their records, and replace signage along both streets. Dozens of city staff across 14 departments have been involved in this effort, and I want to highlight 3 of them specifically: Alfonso Payne, John V.A. Irafasha, and Andy McDonald, sign shop employees who worked diligently outdoors to replace the street signs during the past 3 cold winter months. And I think they're outside today. So we're here today because of partnerships. Partnerships in pursuit of change, change that happened, change that matters. All of us here today, the entire community, can be proud that we are honoring Dr. King and Cesar Chavez in this visible and permanent way.
I told you we had some dynamic co-chairs. Thank you so much for your remarks, and thank you, Lou, for your remarks as well. The co-chairs didn't give me permission to sandman them off the stage, but everybody else. So if you can be mindful of your remarks as we continue the program. I'd just like to introduce briefly Mayor Rosalind Bliss, as well as our city manager, Mark Washington, who will provide congratulatory remarks. In addition, they will invite our surprise guests at the end of their remarks to make an announcement that will expand our mantra, which was created by Josh Lunger, which is 2 heroes, 2 communities, and 2 streets. And today, if you didn't know, it was 2-22-22. We got this 2 thing going on. Mayor Bliss?
Good afternoon, everyone. What a glorious day. Oh my goodness. I am so excited to be here with you all on this truly historic and memorable day in our city. And I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues on the commission. All of us are here. We have Commissioner O'Connor, Commissioner Repart, Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Moody, and of course, Commissioner Lanier and Commissioner Isasi. So as we come together today, we are here to celebrate and commemorate the renaming of Franklin Street to Martin Luther King Jr. Street and Granville Avenue to Cesar E. Chavez Avenue. And I am so delighted to welcome the family members who have joined us today. Welcome. I also want to say congratulations and thank you to the entire March Committee, and especially to Lupe Ramos Montani and Commissioner Womack. They truly have worked tirelessly to bring this idea, this vision to life. And a very, very heartfelt thank you to my colleagues on the commission, City Commissioner Lanier and Commissioner Isasi, who have worked right alongside all of the city staff that Mr. Canfield reflected on through all of the different various stages that this work took, who truly, truly helped us get here today. So thank you both. This change marks a historic and inclusive milestone in our city's history as we work towards a more just, equitable, and inclusive community. Not only for all of us, not only for our current residents, but truly for generations to come. A community where people feel not just connected to community, but truly a community where people feel like they belong. And this is a very visible change and a very visible statement, which reflects significant progress that has been made. Yet, it is also a constant reminder of the hard work that still lays before all of us. These changes to me are a hopeful sign that the community can continue to come together under a common and unifying purpose. And it is my hope that they too will be signs that inspire future generations of Grand Rapidians to continue to be actively engaged, to realize that they can make a difference and that they can be a part of making sure our community truly is an inclusive community. So congratulations again, and thank you to everyone who worked so hard to make today a reality. Today truly is a day that everyone, every single one of us, should be proud of. And I am delighted to have with me our amazing city manager, who also was involved in this entire process step by step. So join me in welcoming City Manager Mark Washington.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I got to recognize in starting acknowledging that we are in a place of faith, a house of faith. And there is a saying in the African American community that we have come this far by faith. Dr. King marched and dreamed by faith. Cesar Chavez embodied that same faith. And it was with that faith, I recall, that I've been here in Grand Rapids 3 years. And early in my arrival, I had a visit by Lupe Montani and Robert Womack. And they explained to me the journey that this city has been on in honoring its heroes. We certainly have community assets. We have great schools that are named after Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez. Thank you for our partners for school district being here today. We have a community center in Grand Rapids named after Martin Luther King. But they told me about the journey to build upon the legacy that previous commissions had built upon with the commemorative designation to a permanent designation. And I told them every city that I lived in, every city that I worked in had a street to honor Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King, and that as city manager in Grand Rapids, by faith, I didn't know where the votes was, I didn't know where the money was, I didn't know where the political will was, where the community incentive, but by faith, I committed to them that I would see this through. And here we are today, at this crescendo of a moment, celebrating not only the names, as Commissioner Lanier reminded us of earlier, but more importantly, the significance of having a place where we remember how we got here. And there's a term in terms of genocide when you get rid of a people. But there's even a worse cultural experience where the people stay and you forget their culture, and that's ethnocide. And so by having these signs, we can always go back and remember not only the people, but the culture that we have to make sure that all Grand Rapidians embrace in our growing inclusive community. This event is not just about the symbolism of the physical intersection of two streets, but also the solidarity that exists among our entire community, both in terms of people and even in cities. So again, I want to thank the March Committee for all the work. I want to thank all of our community partners. I want to thank my elected body, City of Grand Rapids, all of the staff. You heard from Lou Canfield, Eric's teaching of how to be really Mr. DeLong now in his remarks. DeLong, not name, but in length in here. But I especially appreciate the people on the front line who actually install all the signs to make this happen. It is my distinct pleasure now to invite our colleagues from the City of East Grand Rapids, Mayor Favale and City Manager Charles, to now have remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We are extremely honored to be here with you today. Thank you so much. I would also like to extend a special thank you to the March Committee for your service, advocacy, and action in our community. Today, I am proud to share that by enthusiastic and unanimous vote, East Grand Rapids has joined Grand Rapids in renaming Franklin Street as Martin Luther King Jr. Street. This renaming is a significant and intentional way we can honor Dr. King's life and legacy and celebrate our community's commitment to equity and inclusion. These signs will offer a daily reminder of what Dr. King stood for, why we need to continue to push for civil rights, and how we can be a welcoming community for everyone. Dr. King worked tirelessly to create a world where civil rights were recognized as human rights, giving a voice to those who struggled to be seen, heard, and respected. Although we still have a ways to go, I am proud to live and serve in a community that is on an equity journey and challenging itself every day to realize Dr. King's dream. Working together with intention, our communities will be a welcoming place for everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who has worked hard to bring us here today. I'm proud of my City Commission for the unanimous vote, and thank you for Commissioners Carrie Hamrick and John Arnhorst for joining me here today. Thank you again to the March Committee and to the City of Grand Rapids for your partnership and commitment. I would like to introduce our wonderful City Manager, Mr. Shea Charles.
Thank you, Mayor Favale. Thank you, Mayor Bliss, City Manager Washington, and more importantly, thank you to the March Committee for allowing the City of East Grand Rapids to join you in honoring these amazing civil rights heroes. Very briefly, thank you to Eric DeLong and Chief of Staff Lou Canfield for assisting my team getting through this process. We're a couple months behind, but I'm pleased to announce that we will have our signs up probably within the next 60 to 30 days. So we're excited to join everybody. Again, congratulations to the March Committee for bringing this dream to realization.
Two communities, two heroes, two streets, and now two cities. Now, I ask for you to tap into your listening ear to listen closely as Dr. Pink shares an intimate exchange between Mr. Cesar Chavez and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Listen.
Of violent reprisal. You stand today as a living example of the Gandhian tradition with its great force for social progress and its healing spiritual powers. My colleagues and I commend you for your bravery, salute you for your indefatigable work against poverty and injustice, and we pray for your health and your continuing service as one of the outstanding men of America. The plight of your people and ours is so grave that we all desperately need the inspiring example and effective leadership you have given. This telegram was written by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and sent to Cesar Chavez during one of his 25-day fasts. And interestingly enough, it was sent around March of 1968. Do the math. Because in April of 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. So this document that I just read to you is an incredible example for you and for me of what unity should really be about. Unity in focus. It was one man to another who were both fighting awfully hard for the reason of their people, which was equality and freedom. I am tired. I am tired. As my city manager mentioned a while ago, I'm tired of living in cities where I see Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Cesar Chavez's name on the streets. And then I came to this city and I didn't see them. And today, I can celebrate the fact that I no longer live in a city that does not have them. That I no longer have to see. That I can truly see these men and the representation of what they meant as a constant reminder to our community. No matter if you're thinking about it or not, if you're driving down the street, you're going to think about it when you see their name. It must be pretty official. When I get ready to leave my office this morning coming to this church, I'd never been here before, so I had to Google. I had to go into my search. Guess what? I asked Siri how to get here. You know what she said? Turn on Martin Luther King Jr. Street. And if Siri knows, I guess it must be official. Friends, we have days to celebrate today. We have a reason to celebrate. We have a reason all the time to celebrate. Today is a special day to celebrate. But as we celebrate, always remember, as Dr. King as well as Cesar Chavez were, they celebrated victories, but they also knew the work wasn't over. And make sure we keep in focus, because the work isn't over, and we ask ourselves, what's next? God bless you. A few last people I want to thank as we get ready to welcome one of our tremendous guest speakers. Definitely want to thank CAA and Amway, some sponsors that didn't get mentioned that came on last minute. I also want to thank my friend Ezekiel Richardson for being here. Me and him were both winners, including that whole front row. We were all winners in the history contest in high school. So great moment to see them singing today. But there's also someone else we have to thank here. Like we said, this journey's been 20 years, and there was somebody who fought for it. He lost by a few votes, but we had a special bond created. Mayor Hartwell, could you please stand up and let's give Mayor Hartwell an applause for his fight for civil rights. Our next speaker, Derek King. Reverend Dr. Derek King, the son of the late A.D. King and Naomi Barber King, was only 14 years old and living in Louisville, Kentucky on April 4th, 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Reverend Derek King's father joined his famous older brother in the civil rights actions in the South and was there in a hotel room just below when his brother, Dr. Martin Luther King, was assassinated. Dr. Derek King, at 14, saw it on TV and had to report that to his mother. Also at age 13 and 14, his home was firebombed because of his brother's closeness and participation in the activists. And also his AD's father, Derek King's father, AD, was the initiator in many proposals for civil rights that you will soon hear from his son who is with us today. Continuing the ministry of his father, AD, and his uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Derek King conducts workshops and seminars related to the subject of creating social change and nonviolent strategies and tactics, and is committed to the continual struggle to eliminate discrimination, racism, oppression, and violence. He's a certified conflict resolution coach specializing in the discipline of Kingian nonviolence. He retired in May after serving as a professor of religious studies for 19 years at Martin University in Indianapolis. He served for many years as a minister at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. And if you know civil rights, when we say historic, we mean historic. And he served as a pastor at numerous churches throughout his career. Dr. Reverend Derek King holds a bachelor's degree in religious studies from Morehouse College, a master of divinity degree from Colgate, Rochester, Cozier Divinity School, and a doctorate of divinity degrees from Virginia Seminary and Colgate, Georgetown College, and AP Christian Seminary. I had the pleasure of eating dinner with him yesterday, spending a lot of time with him these last few days, and I can tell you I learned a lot about civil rights in books, movies, relatives that told me so much, but I learned more in the last 48 hours with the nephew of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm glad that God is about to let him share some of those things I had the privilege of learning with all of us here in the city of Grand Rapids today. Let's please give a hand for our historic brethren, Dr. Reverend Derek King.
Afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Womack, for that exaggerated introduction. I got concerned about what you were going to say about me. And when you started talking, I said, thank you, God, for letting me enjoy it. You all who have preceded me have Commissioner Lanier, they have condensed my remarks. Certainly, Cesar, Chavez, and Martin Luther King Jr. are deserving of all the accolades that you all have bestowed. So that part of my remarks I'm going to omit. 21 years. I read in a book somewhere, the race is not given to the swift, nor to the strong, but to he or she who endures to the end. Sometimes justice and right ends don't happen like this. But don't quit. don't quit. And it's evident that through your tenacity and perseverance, a goal and an end was reached. The city of Grand Rapids and East Grand Rapids ought to be better because of it. Now I want to say something quickly. Dr. King often reminded America of some noble words attached to a sacred document of United States origin that has inspired governments around the world. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, I want to see if there are some critical listeners out there. Hold these truths to be self-evident that some men So every now and then, God in history gives America men and women who try to keep those noble words in their true context, not some men, but all men. When Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King Jr. started walking in this country, there were segments and fragments that had a problem with all men. I didn't tell, boy. With all men and women being created equal, so there were some instruments developed to benefit and give privilege to some men and deny other men. Something called racism, something called segregation, something called discrimination that was put into law to prevent America from, as Dr. King said, living out the true meaning of his creed. But thanks be to God, there's some people in Grand Rapids and East Grand Rapids caught the vision that we gotta remove some men and bring the scale up to balance for all men. That's what you did. So, Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King, catch this, worked under the cover of the Constitution. They challenged America, live up to what you wrote down. They were not afraid to go to jail for it. One of the two of them even ended up getting killed for it. But working undercover to make America live up to what it wrote down. Think about this. We still have to work under the cover of the Constitution. It's still there. Now, I didn't come in here to beat up these two celebrating communities, but I want to challenge you to keep working undercover. Any country people in this room? Stay with me. Anybody know anything about a shotgun house? Potbelly stove in the middle of the floor. Slop jar by the front door. I was raised with this mantra: everybody who got education doesn't necessarily have sense. Some of the challenges that lie before us: we don't need any more task force. We don't need any more impact studies. All we need is some sense. And back in the day, before there was central air and central heat, there was that shotgun house, and Grandma was the matriarch in the house, and she didn't have education, but Grandma had sense. And when that potbelly stove couldn't put out enough heat to keep everybody under Grandma's roof warm, Grandma used sense. Baby, one of y'all go get me some plastic. Find me some tape. And Grandma would put plastic over the window to try to keep the cold air from coming in. I don't think some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And that plastic over the window, Bishop, couldn't still keep everybody warm. So Grandma didn't have education, but Grandma had sense. Grandma looked around, told one of the children, baby, you see that potato sack over there? Get that for me. You see that old piece of dungaree over there and that piece of linen? Just any fabric that you see laying it around, just bring it to me. Grandma would start cutting out patches, different sizes, different colors. And Grandma would get a piece of thread, start connecting those patches. I wish I had somebody in here. And by the time she got through connecting those different color and different size patches, she stretched out one garment of many colors designed to do one thing: cover everybody. So as we move beyond the celebration of these two street names, as the bishop reminds us and a couple of other speakers, let's not let those become thoroughfares that are infused with criminal activity. Then you as a community have another challenge when your children ask, and another commented on it when they ask, who are these people? Be sure to tell them about those two men. But there's another challenge. We still have to work undercover because the country is not still living up to what it wrote down. And if we do what we said we are going to do, which is working together, works. We are better when we are together. So my challenge to you is to walk together, work together, even if you have to cry together. Martin said it will speed up that day when not some of God's children, but all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, can join hands together and say, free at last.
We have a surprise to give to Reverend Dr. King. And this is Raymond Trujillo, and he painted this commemorative painting for Mr. King. So you can tell it to the audience.
Good afternoon. How do you follow that? This is a very special occasion for me personally. I started my career here 50 years ago down the street at Cesar Chavez School, which is now named, and also at Franklin School, which is down the street. So this is quite an occasion, if you can imagine, in 1971 where we were. And though we've come a long way, we have a lot more to travel. But here we are celebrating an incredible achievement of these naming of these two schools, or these two streets. It is my distinct honor this afternoon to introduce and bring to the podium a man who is no stranger to us here in West Michigan, Paul Chavez. He's president of the Cesar Chavez Foundation. It is fortunate and fitting that he should be here with us today on this very historic day here in Grand Rapids to name these two streets, one of them in honor of his father, Cesar E. Chavez. Paul Chavez has spent his entire life working for the farm workers movement, and he has fulfilled many, many roles. Since 1991, he has led the Cesar Chavez Foundation, which works to improve the lives of farm workers and other poor working families throughout the Southwest. As the middle son of the civil rights and farm labor leader, Paul Chavez has spearheaded this impressive expansion of the nonprofit his father founded in the 1960s through another name. The foundation has grown and adapted into a successful group of social enterprises that address essential human, cultural, and community needs. These enterprises support hundreds of thousands of Latinos, working families, inspiring and transforming communities from rural to urban areas throughout the Southwest and across generations. One of 8 children of Cesar and Helen Chavez, Paul has devoted his entire life to this movement. Prior to his work with the Cesar Chavez Foundation, Paul Chavez served the United Farm Workers of America as a union organizer, contract negotiator, political director, lobbyist in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C., and he was director of marketing operations. He was also a personal assistant to his father. We are so proud to have this man of distinction with us here today. So please give a warm welcome to our special guest, Paul Chavez.
Good afternoon. It is nice to be back here in Grand Rapids and to see our old friend, Dr. Olivares, who's meant so much to us. You know, we want to thank you for being here with us today on this momentous occasion, but more importantly, for allowing us to share a few words with you. You know, we want to, again, thank and recognize the March Committee for all the work that you've done and for showing us how you can work collaboratively to get things done. And so congratulations to Lupe and Mr. Womack and all of the members of the March Committee for your good work. You know, we're also genuinely grateful to the committee to honor Cesar Chavez, Lupe, and Connie Dang, and all the others that have worked for many years to ensure that my father's legacy continues to burn brightly here in Grand Rapids. So we'd like to thank them for their work for all of these years. And then, of course, our gratitude goes out to the City of Grand Rapids, Mayor Bliss and City Manager Washington, and all of the folks on all of the commissioners for not just honoring my father, but doing it with Dr. King. And so it's something that's very special to us, and so we thank you for that heartfelt recognition. You know, it is altogether fitting that, you know, this morning when we drove in on the corner here, we saw Cesar Chavez and Dr. King. And it really was fitting because, you know, their lives really did intersect. While one worked in the South and the other in the West, 30,000 miles away, they were fighting for the same thing. And so the fact that they intersect here makes so much sense because their lives and their lives and their work were so profoundly interconnected. You know, they learned from each other and they drew inspiration from each other. You know, I remember growing up and hearing "We Shall Overcome," And we sang, Nosotros venceremos, right? We shall not be moved, and we sang, No nos moverán. And those were themes that gave us hope and strength to carry on against difficult odds. You know, my father learned much about boycotts from closely following Dr. King's career, beginning with the Montgomery bus boycott in the mid-50s. You know, he said that the words would fly off the newspapers as he read about the boycotts. And most importantly was that he was impacted by the strength of nonviolent social justice action. In 1966, Dr. King wrote my father, and he talked about our struggles, and he said, our separate struggles are really one, a struggle for freedom, for dignity, and for humanity. And a couple years later, when my father fasted for 25 days to cement our movement to the ideals of nonviolence, he received that message that was just read to us, that gave us all strength and comfort during that difficult time. You know, this year, it was in 1962, April of 1962, my father gave up the best paying job he ever had. It was a middle-class life that he had built for his family in East Los Angeles. Now, farm work is like a lot of other jobs that are difficult. You don't want your kids to work in it, and you want to get out of it as soon as you can. And so my father was able to escape the fields. But there was this thing that burned in him. And he and my mother made a decision to give up the most comfortable life that they ever lived, a life where my father didn't have to worry about where the next check was coming to pay the rent, and there was enough food on the table for his growing family. And they moved back to the Central Valley town of Delano, California, to begin his life stream of organizing farm workers, a task that had been tried for 100 years before him, and each attempt had failed in pretty dramatic fashion. And so he went about his work, and by the 70s and 80s, you know, my father had traveled every part of the country, organizing support and our boycotts. And, you know, it was then that he began to realize that his work had transcended farm workers and had gone beyond the fields of California to all parts of this nation. Wherever he went, and including here in Grand Rapids, you know, he would meet people that would tell him how the farm worker struggle had given them hope that they could succeed and the inspiration to go out and work for change. In a landmark speech that my dad gave in 1984, it was one of the few times he ever talked about the impact of his work, because he was always so busy just doing the work. But at the Commonwealth Club of San Francisco, he said, after the union became visible, we Chicanos started entering college in greater numbers, when Hispanics began running for public office in greater numbers, and our people started their rights on a broad range of issues in many communities across the land. The union's survival, its very existence, sent out a signal to all Hispanics that we were fighting for our dignity, that we were challenging and overcoming injustice, and that we were empowering the least educated amongst us, the poorest amongst us. And the message was clear. If it could happen in the fields, it could happen anywhere. It could happen in cities and courts and city councils and state legislatures. He also went on to say, I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but the coming of our union signaled the start of a great change among Hispanics that is only now being seen. And then he ended the speech by saying, once social change begins, it cannot be reversed. You cannot uneducate a person who's learned to read. You cannot humiliate a person who feels pride. You cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore. We've seen the future, and the future is ours. You know, as a member of his family, you know, we're extremely grateful for this honor and this recognition. But the fact is that my father was a pretty humble man, and he rarely let anybody name anything after him. And I think that he felt that way because he knew that there was many Cesar Chavezes, men and women who had struggled against tremendous odds and achieved great things, but whose names are largely lost to history. You know, he used to talk about being an organizer. He considered himself an organizer, and he would say that his job as an organizer was helping ordinary people do extraordinary things. And by doing that, he inspired the poorest of the poor and the least educated amongst us to believe in themselves. He gave farm workers faith that they could challenge and overcome one of the biggest and most powerful industries in California. And in doing so, he inspired people from all walks of life, many who've never set foot on a farm, to social and political activism. And I think that it was a measure of his greatness that he inspired hope and confidence in people that were in short supply of it. And so it is our hope that in addition to the street renaming that we're celebrating today, that all of us will recommit ourselves to my father's legacy and Dr. King's legacy and take an active part in it. And we can do that by going out and being active in our communities. We can do that by being of service to others, especially those most in need. And we can do that by building a society that offers opportunity to everybody. And if we do that, then we honor the legacies of Dr. King and my father in the manner that they would be most proud of. Thank you all very much.